September 11th, 2001, there were 4 hijacked planes. 2 flew into the World Trade Center in New York, 1 flew into the Pentagon in Washington, and the 4th ended up in a field in rural Pennsylvania. That was Flight 93. There's no memorial to Flight 93, at least not yet. But for the past year, a competition has been underway to choose the right design to honor the victims. Many entries came from internationally known design firms. One, though, came from a young architecture student in Ontario. Susan Ormiston followed his progress as he tried to leave his mark on what many see as sacred ground.
Every time I come out, it's emotional, but it's different. I feel like I'm being healed. And I always feel better when I go back home after I've been here.
Christine Fraser's sister died here in a Pennsylvania field, hundreds of kilometers from home. So did 40 others traveling on United Airlines Flight 93. Just a humble fence marks their deaths. Its links woven with bits of memorabilia from visitors who come to see for themselves where that plane crashed on September 11th, 2001. Christine drove her sister, Colleen, to the airport that morning.
Right before we got where it says Newark Airport, she gets this deep breath because she was afraid of flying, which she overcame to do what she needed to do, but she had to deal with that. She was afraid of flying. And she took this deep breath, and I patted her and told her it would be okay. And before I left the airport, I saw her in the rearview mirror. She had a cigarette, and that's the last time I saw her.
The story of Flight 93 is different from the other hijacked planes. In this case, the passengers ultimately knew their plane was on a terrorist mission, likely headed for Washington. Using cell phones, they told their family members they were going to try and overtake the terrorists, to possibly divert the plane from reaching the capital. They succeeded. On that clear fall day, Flight 93 went way off course. It dove nose first deep into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. So hard, so fast, the plane and everyone on it was obliterated. Rescuers found only a smoking crater. Here it is 4 years later. That doomed plane went down just over there in the field in front of that grove of trees. The scar it carved in the landscape is growing over now. But 40 passengers and crew are buried here in what's now sacred ground. But there's nothing permanent here to honor their sacrifice. So a year ago, a search began to find the right design team to create a new national park and a lasting memorial for Flight 93. On 9/11, Canadian Ken Lum was studying architecture at the University of Waterloo in Ontario. He wrote his master's thesis on sacred spaces. Then he turned those ideas into a design for the Flight 93 competition. It was a whim. His was one of 1,000 entries. But incredibly, this determined 29-year-old made the cut to the final 5.
I never really expected this. It was more like an exercise. But after hearing about this, I was shocked and actually humbled by the gesture.
There must have been a few nights after that where you didn't sleep.
Yeah. Oh, yes. It was more of, oh my God, what am I going to do now? What am I up against?
We hooked up with Ken Lum last February in some of the worst winter weather as he headed to the Pennsylvania crash site. He and the 4 other finalist teams were trying to scope out the site.
The first thing I thought was that the site is a very humbling site. It overpowers you with a sense of massiveness, and it makes you really small.
They came here in part to meet surviving family members, like Calvin Wilson. His brother-in-law was one of the pilots.
It was important to us that we didn't want any of this really disturbed with commercial construction of buildings and, enclosures. A picture of a statue of Atlas holding up the world in the middle of the thing. It's not what we wanted.
Now there's, I guess, a different level of responsibility there, in the sense that now we are emotionally affected by it.
And for the first time, he came face to face with his daunting competition. The other teams are all Americans, established professional architects, one the dean of an architecture school. That winter trip starts the clock. The deadline is June 15th. Barely 4 months. Seems like a long time, but Ken's team has an immense amount of work ahead.
Well, you see, the thing is that...
Yeah, closer.
Back in Toronto, they get down to it. Ken evicts his parents from their den at home and sets up Design Central. On his team, 2 other grad students from University of Waterloo. Dennis Fanti, good with detail plans, and Yvonne Lam, with a passion for architectural landscaping. They've shoved aside their master's theses for now. Flight 93 will soon become their obsession.
You follow the flight path. That's the idea. You follow the flight path.
Ken's design traces the aborted path of Flight 93. First heading west to San Francisco, then suddenly turning back east and south, and finally, 15 minutes by air from Washington, slicing into the ground at 500 miles per hour.
The idea was to be able to take visitors down this path so that they could somehow re-experience the events that unfolded. Now, then there's a big question as to, re-experience what? Re-experience the horror, or what I would say, re-experience the sacrifice and courage that unfolded. I think that's what I wanted to do.
Ken is very passionate with his designs. Like, he derives so much joy and excitement and happiness when he designs something.
Ken's mother and dad brought their son and his sister to Canada 9 years ago from Malaysia, mostly to get a better education. But they never dreamed of this.
Yes, participated in some competition before, and I think this is a big one.
It's big and consuming. The days fly by. Designing the project gobbles up time. Ken adds a new team member, Ivan Illick, expert model builder. They put all the other commitments on hold. And still, there's more work than days left. It's mid-June, now just 5 days before the design deadline. Ken mounts a modest show and tell at a local library with a few snacks prepared by Mom.
I guess the purpose of this little, I won't call it exhibition because it's not, but it's a little private gathering, I guess, for friends and family to basically come and look at our panels and basically just give us comments on, what they think about the project.
What is the road doing there?
Ken, am I right or no? This road is this one.
What does that mean?
Okay, where is the site?
This is actually you standing here and looking that way.
He's hardly slept, but he's feeling pretty good. That is until this guy arrives. Siamek Harari is a friend of the Lums and a renowned Toronto architect. He and landscaper Ina Elias have been arm's-length advisors on Ken's project, but they haven't seen it in a while.
Yeah, there's not enough landscape. There's not enough of the meadow coming through.
It's way too abstract, I think. You got to find a way to communicate to your mother. Does your mother get it?
Does my mother get it?
Do you get it?
Mommy?
If you don't get it, it's not going to work.
There's a big discrepancy between this drawing that seems to be about a landscape proposal and the images which seems to be about an architectural proposal.
Yeah.
If I had to pick one and say this is your tipper,
Yeah.
This is one that'll tip them in your favor or tip them against you. It'll be this one, because this is the only one that puts you in the space. Now you've got 2 weeks left. You're going to drill into those.
Actually, we have like 5 days left.
5 days?
I thought you had 2 weeks. Well,
Yes, that's 5 days. The consultants swoop out and leave Ken shell-shocked. Your dog tired? Are you feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah. It's kind of like just tired. It's worn, like really worn, kind of tired. And I think it's because I haven't slept. Except for 1 hour. That's not too good.
Was it helpful?
Yeah, it's really helpful. It's just like now I'm starting to realize we should have done it earlier.
The next day, it's a new, revised game plan. Harari's firm has offered some last-minute help from its top computer designers. Harari confesses he may have been a little too blunt in last night's critique.
Aina and I were talking about it in the car. We said, were we a little too rough? And the thing is that I think he's got the material there, and he has the chance to win, I think.
so...
Can I make a suggestion?
Yep.
What I would suggest is, given the time that we have, I think that we have to be like almost, like it's strategic strikes.
Okay.
So, Ken's going to choose the 4 images that he really wants help with, and he's going to give you guys each 1 or 2, and he's going to say these are the things that this image needs to have happen, because we're so close to the deadline. We all just have to be foot soldiers and go conquer the hill, right?
That hill is short but steep now. 4 days to go. The enemy is time and stamina. They've almost moved into an airless space at the university. The model building's behind schedule.
Ken has never had the chance to build, to actually build something physical other than the kind of sketch models we've been doing. He does a lot of work on the computer. So as Ivan's been building it, he's encountered problems with the buildability of this thing, the real buildability of this thing.
By now, the team is juggling so many balls, decisions, and deadlines. It's surprising they haven't cracked.
Do you want the gravel to spill into the swale?
Okay. See these guys?
Would you like to just leave it as that gap so it'll just reflect up the wall?
I think that gap is okay.
With the model back on track, Ken and Yvonne pull one last all-nighter, making dozens of tiny changes. And then it's the last working day. The models have to be in Pennsylvania tomorrow. But even though Ivan spent the night here, they still aren't ready. Ken and Yvonne inspect their design panels fresh from the printers. These are the cell, what the jury will judge.
No, we'll make it. That's not a problem. We're just running maybe 6 hours behind. But I think it's okay. Yeah,
So
we'll
what took up the time?
A lot of small things. But, a lot of small things become one big thing, right?
With little sleep, they plan to drive the project down themselves. It's a 10-hour trip. No time to get lost en route.
79, 76, we missed Pittsburgh. We avoided that little town. And I need that because that's got all the contact information. Okay.
Ready to go? They're stalled once again.
Oh my God, my bag's in there. Oh
Matt has
Matt
the key.
has the key.
So you're waiting for Matt to get back.
Good Lord.
Finally, they're off, headed for the U.S. border and Pennsylvania, the last leg of their Flight 93 journey.
Business, we are finalists for Flight 93 National Memorial Competition, so we are delivering our goods.
Good luck.
Great, thank you.
They make it on time. Ken Lum's design proudly displayed next to his competition. The 5 designs are very different. One called Disturbed Harmony includes stone markers for each of the passengers and crew. Another is a modernist memory trail with a series of overlooks to sacred ground. Fields, Forest and Fences is a nod to their rural resting place. And there's a crescent-shaped embrace of red maples. Finally, Ken Lum's rendering of the flight path. Families can say what they like, but a jury of professionals will make the final decision. Jeff Reinbold is guiding the jury.
If you go out there now, it's a very moving place. It's the kind of place that's powerful, and you don't really know why, but it has a certain presence. And their challenge was not to lose that and to build on that and to find a way to have people understand the story but still not lose the power of those emotions.
What are the odds, Jeff, of a student from Canada winning a great big U.S. memorial design competition?
Yeah, they're probably as good as any, I would say. At this point, all 5 are presented and treated very equally. It's a challenge for the jury to come in and look at the designs. They have to, again, weigh them on which ones meet the mission statement and technically which ones can be built.
No politics here?
No politics.
Oh, good to see you. Good to see you too. I'm very happy. I think I could live with any of them at this point.
Christine Fraser's just anxious to get the memorial built, to properly place it in the 9/11 legacy.
Where I live, they don't talk about it out there. In New Jersey, I live across from the World Trade Center site. And this has been forgotten pretty much.
And so, Ken Lum and his team spent the summer waiting for the jury's final decision. Waiting, with the exception of one other big event in their lives. On the very day they delivered their project to Pennsylvania, they drove madly back to Ontario. Why? To attend their convocation. Ken Lum and Ivan Illich, already student stars at the University of Waterloo, became architects, officially. And they made it just in time.
I really didn't know whether they'll make it in time for the graduation, so it was every few hours a phone call, every few hours a phone call.
It's been a wild couple of months for your family.
Yeah, it has been. But it was fun, You see the team working together, it was really good. Yeah, the experience is really good for all of them. Now you can rest.
Whether their Flight 93 design wins or not, this is an honor that won't fade. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Waterloo, Ontario.
And Susan joins us in the studio now. So what happened? Who won?
Well, he didn't. The jury chose someone else. They chose the embrace of red maples that you saw in our story, but they did say that Ken Lum's design was bold and daring, it was challenging and sobering, and that of all the designs, it probably most captured the event of Flight 93 and the emotional impact of that event. And Ken Lum's team believes, given those comments from the jury, that they came in second, that they made it to the final 2. Quite incredible, really, Peter, when you think about it. 1,000 entries, a student up against established architects. He made his mark.
And there's controversy attached to the one who did win.
Not surprisingly, given all the interests involved, some are asking why they chose this very memorable embrace of red maples. Some are suggesting it's just too close to the symbol of Islam, the red crescent, and wondering why there would be some attachment to that. But again, controversy in these competitions is pretty routine.
What's happened to Ken now? I mean, that must have been an incredible high.
Yeah. Well, I talked to him today, and he said it took much longer than he thought to get over this whole event and the emotional strain of it all. He's a graduated, master's student now, but in spite of that, he has to get a job, and that's what he's doing. He's looking for a job, and interestingly, he still has to qualify. He has to be licensed as an architect, and that could take 2 or 3 years of practical work experience. And even those hundreds of hours that he spent on that Flight 93 design do not count toward work experience. Imagine that.
All right. Great story.
Thank you.
Good seeing you again.